Egypt's pyramids. The greatest of these monuments was the tallest structure on Earth for over 4,000 years. They contain gigantic stone blocks, weighing up to 70 tons. Yet they were made by a society that didn't even possess the wheel. Now, Egyptian pyramids on Modern Marvels. Inside the famous Great Pyramid of Khufu at Giza, a series of mysterious passageways lead through the mountain of stone. Passing through a magnificent grand gallery, the main passageway finally ends at a granite-lined vault, deep within the massive structure. Called the King's Chamber, many scholars believe that this is where the great Khufu was finally laid to rest. But was he? For centuries, these extraordinary edifices have inspired an enduring fascination in people around the world. Generations have wanted to see them, study them, and unlock their age-old secrets, such as why and exactly how they were built. And yet, despite the best efforts of researchers, the solutions to many questions surrounding the pyramids remain tantalizingly obscure. The lack of concrete evidence from ancient Egyptian sites has complicated the problem. Even the application of the most modern technology has failed to unravel all the mysteries. Recently, however, new theories have been proposed, which call some of the key generally accepted ideas about the pyramids into question, and that may indeed solve some of the riddles concerning these magnificent achievements. One of the first mysteries about the pyramids is their exact number. Nearly 100 have been discovered in Egypt. Surprisingly, however, at least 3 pyramids that are mentioned in inscriptions remain obscured by time and the relentless desert sands.
It may seem surprising that pyramids that have not been located yet, but over thousands of years, their superstructures may have been quarried away and all that's left is underground or may have been built over.
Built during a span of almost 1,000 years, from approximately 2630 to 1640 BC, the pyramids stand as cultural and engineering marvels of staggering proportions.
Not only are they incredibly magnificent structures, but of course they're also the few wonders of the ancient world to survive.
The purpose of the pyramid is to serve as the king's tomb, but that's only the beginning because we have to understand why the king of Egypt needed to have a tomb quite like that. The pyramid is the architectural realization of the king's ascent to the sun. That was the king's after-death fate. The pyramid is the spot in which that great transformation takes place, in which the king is reborn.
An ancient Arab proverb reads, "Man fears time, but time fears the pyramids." And yet the so-called golden age of pyramid building lasted for only 150 years, during the 4th dynasty of the Egyptian Old Kingdom. And the greatest of the pyramids, those on the Giza Plateau near Cairo, were constructed over a span of only 3 generations. Remarkable engineering achievements in their own right, the pyramids were also the centerpieces of often vast complexes of temples and smaller tombs, called necropolis.
The word necropolis literally means city of the dead. So with the pyramid itself, we only have the monument over the king's tomb. Attached to the pyramid is a temple. Then there's a long causeway that leads to the valley where there's another temple. Offerings are presented to the statues of the king in this temple. There is enormous staff that's involved for the upkeep of the temple.
The legendary Sphinx, also at Giza, is part of one of these necropolis. That built around the pyramid of King Khufu's son, Khafre. We may know the reason why the pyramids were built, but the origin of their specific shape is still uncertain. The earliest Egyptian burials involved placing the body in a shallow pit, then covering it with a large rock or mound of stones. These not only served to keep jackals from digging up the dead, but also were probably meant to represent the primordial mound from which the Egyptians believed all life sprang.
The ancient Egyptians were oriented towards the Nile, which was the source of their life and their sustenance. And the Nile used to flood every year. After that was over, when the floods would recede, the land would become visible again. So that became a metaphor for creation. So the primeval mound was the first time the first land began to be seen when the first waters, the primeval waters, had begun to recede. And it was upon this primeval mound that the sun rose for the first time.
Then this mound actually is the pyramid. It represents the primeval mound, that the God created whole Egypt through this mound.
The symbol of this primordial mound was the sacred benben, a pyramidal-shaped stone that most Egyptologists believe would later influence the form of the pyramids.
And in the top of the pyramid, the capstone is the benben. Then the capstone, that they put it in the top of the pyramid, and they cased it with electrum, white gold and yellow gold. And that capstone is a symbol that the pyramid is finished.
But some other scholars cite additional influences for the shape of the pyramids. One Egyptologist has a provocative new theory, based on a migration of desert people into the Nile Valley over 5,000 years ago, at exactly the time when pyramids began to be built. According to the theory, the newcomers brought knowledge of the desert landscape with them that might have affected the pyramid's form.
A very important thing in the Western Desert is the fact that the only landforms that persist everywhere are conical or pyramidal landforms. Pointed hills is the main persisting landscape. These are three conical structures in the middle of the desert, some 300 miles west of the Nile. The ancient Egyptians would have seen these things and would have wanted to build their structures that would remain in the windy environment in that form. So these natural landforms can definitely become, in my mind, the precursors to the pyramids.
But before actual pyramids were built, Egyptian tombs went through another stage of development, the mastaba. Mastabas were low trapezoidal structures with sloping sides and flat roofs. Usually made of mud bricks, they developed from the primordial mound burials.
Mastaba, and it's the Arabic word for bench, but they're bigger than any bench. But the mastaba is the word for the superstructure of a private tomb. The Egyptian tomb really consists of two parts. There's the below ground part, which is the actual burial chamber, and there is the above ground part, which could be cut into the cliff, or it could be a constructed monument like a mastaba.
With mastabas, the Egyptians had taken the first step towards the classic pyramid. The next stage came around 2630 BC, during the Egyptian Third Dynasty, during the reign of King Djoser, when Djoser's high priest and architect, Imhotep, began building the famous step pyramid at Saqqara.
In Dynasty 3, which is before Dynasty 4, there was a genius architect. His name is Imhotep. And he began to make a revolution in building, changing the building from mud brick to limestone. And he built what's called the step pyramid, a mastaba above the one, until he reached 6 mastabas. And that was a revolution.
Soaring to almost 200 feet in height, with a base measuring 397 by 358 feet, the step pyramid is thought by many scholars to be the first large building in human history made completely of stone, and the first pyramid of any kind built in Egypt. Imhotep remains one of the few overseers of a pyramid whose name is still known. Exactly how he designed and planned the structure is not.
We have from later times papyrus where they planned a temple, and they knew in advance how many people they would need, how many food they would have to bring to the place, and how many stones would be needed. And so there must have been similar papers for all these pyramids, but unfortunately we don't have them.
However, we do know how the workmen actually accomplished the construction.
To move the stone, they used levers, wedges, and rope, usually pulled by teams of men, chanting, heaving at a 1, 2, 3 heave sort of thing. To cut the stone, they used copper chisels, which are softer than modern iron chisels, but limestone is a soft stone. Of course, it takes a lot of work, but they had the manpower to do it.